Welcome to Dirty Data here on the fourth period. That's Aaron Ward and Shane Kelly. I'm Dave Pagnotta. And gentlemen, the Edmonton Oilers have 3 wins in their last 15 games. The Edmonton Oilers are frustrated. It is showing off in the media now, at press conferences, and this team, with 2 of the best players on the planet, just can't seem to get it together. Wardo, what the heck's going on in Alberta?
Well, you mentioned frustration. I imagine the fan base is just as frustrated. The idea that this is Groundhog Day every single year. We have the same theme, the same story this year as we had the last year, as the year before, that they still have not addressed the shortcomings. The idea that this team doesn't really have an identity. The identity is basically wait for your 2 top scorers to score and hope you can outscore all your mistakes. This is a team that puts up a ton of goals for, but also is actually outscored on the scoreboard in terms of average goals given up per game. So the issue here is you have a great power play, so it's obviously putting up numbers. Now you have to start looking at your 5-on-5 play. Theme-wise, I mean, this is an organization, they brought in a GM that's supposed to address the shortcomings. The shortcomings are clearly from a defensive standpoint. You can't play Darnell Nurse every single minute of the game. Although you might want to, you just can't. So now they're bringing in a veteran by the likes of Duncan Keith. Still hasn't addressed much. He's been not great for the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm putting that nicely. Ceci has not been great. I mean, Barrie has not been great. The shining light back there has been Bouchard. But this is a 22-year-old. Is this where you want to be? It's almost an indictment that the story exists that a 22-year-old is one of your leaders back there on D. Goaltending has been abysmal. So from a 50,000-foot view on the Edmonton Oilers, this is a team that really attempts every year to address an issue, and it lacks that again. There's no depth on this team to get them to a place or the promised land.
Yeah, to me, all of the guys they brought in on the back end haven't been great. The goaltending is really, really letting this group down. And it kind of starts and ends there for me if you're looking for an answer of why they've been this bad. Skinner, a 23-year-old draft pick, I mean, he hasn't shown much in junior. Not really reasonable to think that he's going to be the answer. Koskinen's 33. Mike Smith is 39. These are not guys where at the start of the season, analytically, you would look and go, it's likely that they're going to be any good. And surprise, surprise, Smith got hurt and Koskinen's been terrible. So, I don't know what they do at that position, but they absolutely have to do something because the analytics suggest that there's no improvement coming out of this group from a goaltending perspective. The D-core we talked about. To me, the problem with this group is not so much that, they're getting caved 5-on-5. They're actually holding their own more or less from a possession standpoint. It's more that, again, when you talk about solutions, it's all external stuff. Keith is a draft pick. Ceci's a signing. Bouchard and Nurse are first-round picks, but where are they? They just don't hit on anything outside of the first round. So you're constantly needing to go outside the organization, and that requires more resources and more money than if you just would develop somebody from, there's 6 other rounds in the draft. Find a player from one of them who could contribute.
It's a head-scratcher to think that they let go of Ethan Bear. Now, Ethan Bear, I don't think is a solution to the situation, but clearly Carolina Hurricanes did their homework. They looked at the analytics. They saw what the guy could do, what he may bring to the table. It wouldn't solve things for Edmonton, but again, from someone you already possess, it could help the situation. And you gave them away at the cost of other guys that currently exist in this lineup that leave you to wonder, what did you see in them?
Right now, guys, it looks like the only move that they're making, because they're so cap-strapped, is likely Evander Kane. As we sit here right now recording this, the NHL is wrapping up their investigation on Kane's cross-border travel with COVID and allegedly and all that stuff. If he gets the green light, he'll be able to sign. And all signs right now point to him joining the Edmonton Oilers, which would then push somebody down the lineup. But beyond Evander Kane, and then try to contain him within that room, is there an immediate, and I know this question was asked to a certain player on the team, but is there an immediate hole that could be filled that could help this team in the right direction?
I don't think there's an immediate fix, and Shane may disagree, but here's the deal. This is the same problem every single year, and that's the frustration of Leon Draisaitl sitting up and having to answer the same question from the same Edmonton media members. if a player on the team had an answer for what the fix was, especially a leader, a guy who's leading the league in scoring, he's highly regarded in his locker room for what he brings to the table, he would have done something to fix it already. I think it's misdirected if you start throwing it at players to ask them in a state of frustration that exists not only on the ice but in that locker room, for them to come out vocally and publicly indict guys on their team, whether it be management or another guy in the locker room. You don't know how a locker room works, and I think that's where the added frustration exists, and you see it play out when media wants answers that don't exist, and they look to players to give them, and then there's an escalated amount of tension with calling a guy pissy in his response. I think it's just it's a larger indictment of a really bad situation. You've got some guys like Nugent Hopkins on the IR. Maybe Kane comes in and adds an added threat and some depth up front. But again, it still doesn't address what we started this clip on. The decor and the goaltending. Kane can't stop pucks. He's not putting the pads on to stop the puck. He's not skating backwards to accept the rush. Edmonton still is missing the mark. Although they're trying to address it, they're not hitting the target.
Yeah, you talk about one player. To me, if they actually had a goaltender who could, stop pucks at a league average level, I don't think we're talking about this team as a frustrating, like disappointing group. I think we're saying, they're one of the better teams in the league. They should be doing better, but they're not bad. From an analytics perspective, I absolutely love them bringing a guy like Kane in. I don't want to touch the off-ice stuff or the dressing room stuff at all, because that's Wardo. That's, you tell us how that's going to work. But from an on-ice perspective, the fact of the matter is this is a two-line team or even a one-line team when they combine Draisaitl and McDavid. They need to find some secondary scoring. Kane is one of the better scorers in the NHL. He also actually plays an underrated defensive game based on the numbers. So if you can bring in a guy like that at basically, on a free, like you're paying him league minimum, obviously, to me, there's probably not a more impactful on-ice move with a team whose cap situation is what it is than bringing in a guy this good. And I would, from an on-ice perspective, like that's a great move for this group.
We'll see if it helps. But, as we're talking about, that's one area that can help spread a little bit of depth. They've got the $4.5 million tied to Koskinen that if they want to address goaltending, will have to move out. If they do, and we're talking about goaltending, is Marc-Andre Fleury a guy that can help this club this season?
Obviously.
I mean, almost
you're talking about Marc-Andre Fleury,
yep,
and then you're throwing in Koskinen and Smith. I think it's obvious. I think the deal, though, is, there are some parameters in Fleury's contract that allows or prevents him from moving, so I think that's a clear hurdle. And does Marc-Andre Fleury, in light of moving from Vegas this year and taking his family and going to the Midwest, then want to go Northwest and head to a very messy situation at this stage of his career? Or are there other options with other teams available to him? I imagine he'll be the smart veteran, play his cards slow, not tip on what he's thinking, and wait till the very bitter end.
Yeah, there's almost no starter in the league that if you took them off their team and put them on Edmonton wouldn't currently be an upgrade on the goaltending that they're getting. So, of course, the answer is yes. Wardo, you already touched on the off-ice stuff. The one other place that I would call where they could use an upgrade, and they probably won't be able to do it because of all the stuff we've talked about, but Tyson Barrie, he's been great on the power play, but he has become essentially unplayable at 5-on-5. So, unless you basically just say 12 minutes a night, we're going to get caved on the back end, and we're okay with that, they could really use somebody there to prop him up. I don't know who that would be with the assets they've got and the cap space, but he needs help.
We'll obviously figure out exactly how these Oilers are going to get out of this little funk that they're in, hopefully sooner than later, so we don't have to keep talking about them, and hopefully the media over there can maybe ease just a tiny bit. That might help them out as well. This is Dirty Data. That's Shane and Wardo. I'm Dave. We'll catch you next time.